want answers.
I want the truth.
Hello and welcome to the Realize Real Lies podcast. I am your host, Georgina Grace, and I'm joined today by the most magnificent and powerful Max Lowen. Max, you are a ruling 36-9. This is such a significant and very, very powerful number. As we know, we've had Rachel on this podcast, Rachel Vaughan, and she's also a 36-9. I've also done some readings for some other survivors who are also ruling 36-9. So this is a really, really significant number. And, this energy is like, I really like, this is your last lifetime. You've gone through. Yeah. Yeah. It's been what really has struck me with doing a few readings with survivors from different places with this energy as their ruling number is that this is their last lifetime. And, it's like they've gone through many trial and error over many lifetimes, and they've come in with exactly, they've worked it out. They've worked out what combinations of numbers and energy and stuff like that they need to equip themselves with in order to fulfill on this really, really, really long time mission of ending a massive cycle. This is what this energy is interested in. This energy is really passionate about children. It's really passionate about animals. It's really passionate about nature. It is like the Mother Earth kind of energy, and that deep kind of, when Mother Earth or anything living on Mother Earth gets impacted, this energy feels the impact of that so kind of vividly. And it's also a really, really powerful energy in that, they're the channelers, they're the healers, they're empaths, but they're also incredibly gifted, very, very, very gifted in their psychic ability and their experience. They bring the most extreme kind of experiences to them quite early, which we're going to hear all about today. Because, I really think that in this human reality, it's perceived so physically, and that's kind of, we need to go through things physically in order for us to have awareness of them. And so we do that very quickly, particularly your energy, very, very, like almost, not almost, immediately, and then it's a lifelong journey of, let's end this cycle. This energy always feels like they live 50 lifetimes, if not within a single year, at least within a single lifetime, because they are constantly bringing to them what needs to heal, what needs to be ended. So this is just a little example of the kind of spirit of the human that we have with us today. I'm really, really honored and privileged to have you here, Max. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm glad to be here, Georgina. It's always an honor when people want to interview me. I really just want to do my part to get us through this transition to the place where we're meant to be, and out of this darkness. And, the numerology, I don't know that much about it, but it is uncanny when you talk how accurate that is. I always actually say and really feel. So in a few months, I'll have been here on the planet 6 decades, right? I swear to you, I've lived 200 lifetimes in that time. So many versions of me, so many things that I did. I can't even, it really does feel that way. So I find that very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And just, you brought up that, yeah, you have lived many different lifetimes, and you really have, in the sense that you have actually died
Yeah.
So you have actually lived many different lifetimes and you have come back, um, which is even more of a testament to the strength and resilience and also the what's the word? Like the stubbornness as well. Like, no, like I've come here on a mission and you're not gonna like, there's literally nothing you can do to destroy me and to deter me off that mission. And so I would really love just to give you an opportunity, Max, to share your story and, don't be afraid to share any detail. I think it's really important that we hear what you have to say and your experience because this is what's really going on in the world. And I think, we're at a point where like, you've said it yourself, you're getting requests for interviews more and more and more. And so it is coming out, but we can't rest. We can't rest.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just myself, but many SRA survivors have been speaking out and being interviewed. And it's really incredible to me when I see this, because I mean, it's not about me, it's about getting this out there because the global cult that runs our planet is their entire thing is based on pedophilia. It's based on the ritual rape, murder, and harvesting the energy of children. So it is so important to understand what they do to us. Because I have to say that in a parallel manner, what they've done to me, for example, they do in great measure to all of society, right? So as an example, one of the first things that was done to me when I came in, when I was a baby, is the deliberate breaking of attachment between myself and my mother. My mother was already very unstable and fractured as a person because she was, I suspect, I mean, I'm sure, put through similar things because it's generational. But they really made an effort to do that. And I remember a ritual when I was a baby. I remember being in a crib and my mother being brought in the room and all kinds of things, lights on and off, her in masks, loud sounds, me being twirled by my ankle, all kinds of, which is terrifying to a baby. So, and the different, and then subsequently when I was around 2, there was a ritual in a Catholic church where she and my family members were in the pews, and then my perpetrator and a priest, they did this whole ritual with me on the altar, burned a metal cross into my chest, and then put me in a small coffin and shut the lid. And again, this ritual, all these rituals are to separate me from my family, to separate them from me. I'm the chosen, like, child to be done, those things to be done to. And so that was done to me, but in parallel, in tandem, the way our society is set up, they break attachment with everyone. If you're born in a hospital, there's an attachment breaking right there. When I had my own child, as late as 2003, I had to fight to keep her on my body. They wanted to take her, they wanted to put her in that room with all the other babies. This, if you look at any mammal, what the most important thing is that physical contact, and they discourage that in our society. Then they tell you to put your baby in a room by itself in a crib, which looks a bit like a cage to me. And then they tell you when your baby cries to ignore it, because it has to learn to self-soothe. That's not natural. That creates a break in attachment. Then they've created poverty conditions deliberately so that both parents have to go to work. You have to put your child in daycare, in state care, another breaking of attachment. Children go to school all these hours a day where they're indoctrinated. So I don't need to go on. I think you get the point of what I mean. So I think it's important to speak out and share details of the trauma that was done to me, because that trauma is in effect actually being done to the collective of humanity. And attachment's just step one.
Yeah, far out. It just puts it so black and white. And it really is, that's like what was done to you was so extreme, but yeah, they are doing this on a massive scale in terms of the brainwashing and the programming. And this is something that I talk about often, particularly with my husband, is that, we've been, just living life off one wage, which in this day and age is not easy to do. And, you know, but it's really challenging to do that because I'm unwilling to give up my son to anyone else's care that I don't wholeheartedly trust with my life and his life. And it is just the attack on the nuclear family. Everyone is victim to this. And so I'd love for you to, Max, to talk a little bit about why this is the case. What is the point of doing this, of breaking up the bond, the sacred and powerful bond between mother and baby, but also between, husband and wife as well, because if both mother and father are out working, then they're not connecting either. And then I don't know how people are doing it, in that they get the busy morning rush time with their family, and it's all rush, 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 hurry up. We've got to get you to daycare so we can get to work. And then it's home and everyone's worked a full day. So everyone's tired, and, and then it's rush, 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 dinner and bath and bed. And it's not living, it's not life. And so why does this happen? Why are they doing this?
They hate love. Love is a frequency that they cannot exist in. If you want to go look up David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, I like that one. If you're in survival emotions, you're in their frequency bandwidth, and etherically, the etheric demonic beings feed off of our energy when we're in those survival emotions. When we're in love or peace or abundance, we can't be mind controlled by them. We can't be used by them. We can't be their food, whether physically or etherically, right? Mm. So it's all about that. The family, that's a human of God, to use, or of spirit, however you want to say it, bond, right? And so when you have family, when you love your child, and when you have all of that, a human being is strong, is what they are meant to be. And these people are actually less powerful than us. So they have to break us down as much as they can to manipulate us and mind control us and use us, because who we are is way over who they are. And so they do this all completely deliberately, to be able to to create actually through us. See, they can't even really create. We're in the image of a creator and we can create, but they have to use our creativity to create. And they've created a hell on earth. So how do you create a hell on earth? Through a human race that is loving and good and bonded and together. Well, you have to traumatize them. You have to fragment them. And then you have to program those fragments. You have to create poverty. There's no need on this planet for poverty. There's no real scarcity. All those are programs. They make us sick with their medicine and with their food and the water and all the stuff that they've poisoned. They control our level of consciousness with the electromagnetic grid that's now everywhere on the planet. Mm-hmm. They mind control us with the media, with Hollywood. They educate us in exactly the opposite of what is true. So, and then they give us programs, through religion, through everything. So all of this is done to destroy who we really are, to fragment us so we can be controlled and manipulated so that they can execute their agenda.
Mm.
But think of the lengths that they've had to go to do that, right? It's a constant thing, which shows you, and I always say this, how powerful we truly are. So,
100%, 100%. And it's really, and I'd like to go into some of the lengths that they have gone to, particularly obviously with you and your life, because it's far out. What a journey that you have been on. And yeah, like you said, right from birth, they start this. And that's, you know, the fact that they have to do that, they have to start right from birth, it also just backs up what you said. Like they are not powerful, these people that we're going to learn more about in this episode. We are way more powerful, that they have to literally start breaking down our human being nature and, like you said, our ability to create our light source from the moment we are born. And do you feel like your your whole experience and what they did with you was like you're the guinea pig in terms of like what they're going to do? Well, if it works here, then this is what we can do on a mass scale to everybody else in, you know, obviously not as well, it's not as obvious and not as intense as like what they do on a mass scale in terms of what they did with you. But do you feel like you were like the guinea pig in terms of the experimental? I know you were experimented on, but your whole life experience.
first of all, I want to say it's not just me who have gone through these experiences. I know many, many people who have been through uncannily similar things. So they do have a playbook.
Mm.
And still today, 8 million children a year go missing. Okay. And this is still happening today, right? So satanic ritual abuse was the first form of mind control. They understand psychology. So they use terror and extreme pain and torture to shatter the psyche, so that because to survive you have to split off what just happened, and then there's a fresh alter. That, just as a side note, they do this deliberately to program these different, so they'll create a trauma, create a new part, program that, etc. And so a lot of people who, for example, are like super soldiers or assassins or whatnot, they will do these actions upon a trigger word that's programmed in there. They'll go into a different part. It's kind of like being a multiple, right? And then they will execute the task that they were programmed for, but then they won't really ever be able to be caught or be under torture, get the confession out of them, because they literally then go back to a different part and they don't know. These different parts of the person don't know what the other is doing. So they do this deliberately for nefarious purposes, right? And they use children, and they create in children, children who are going to be honeypots for powerful people, for blackmail, for control. They create children who can psychically kill. They create children to go into, anyone in any political position of power on the planet right now, they have been done to in this way. They are groomed for their future roles. So they have their people, and then they put their people in these positions of power. So any presidents, politicians, global agency heads, heads of militaries, heads of intelligence, religious heads, top of that food chain, top of medical systems, education, you name it, any system we have on earth, the people at the top are groomed for their positions, and they are done to with these things so that they will be the right person for that position, and they will obey, and they will do, what they're supposed to do.
Mm.
Now, if you look at history, if you look at ancient history, what you'll see, all those, there's art out there of like feeding children to Moloch, to these gods, the sacrifice of virgins, virgin, i.e. child, right? This has been going on for a long, long time. Then it went underground, but it's and literally happening, not just metaphorically, it went underground. It literally went under the ground. So we have military bases, we have experimental facilities, et cetera, all over the planet where children are taken to and all these things are done to them. Enter psychology into the arena. Now they have that vehicle for programming and mind control and manipulation. And then when you add technology, which we have now, it's a trifecta that, as you can see by the global population's apathy and compliance and willingness to go and harm themselves and inject themselves with things that they shouldn't, you can see that it has been working, right? So I just want to say, speaking of underground facilities, I was taken to one my entire childhood. It was run by an uncle of mine in Italy. It was underground in Rome. And it was like a small city under there. I mean, it had everything. And they did all kinds of tortures there, many on me. I mean, if I was electrocuted with electroshock, I was buried alive with dead bodies. I was waterboarded. I was beaten. I was raped. I was put in cages for long periods of times. I was put in freezers, those giant freezer lockers where they hang bodies for periods of time. I was, made to watch animals and people be horribly tortured and murdered. I was put in all kinds of experiments where I had to choose between, hurting another person or being hurt myself. And I would refuse to hurt any living being. But then they discovered that was my weak point. So then they did all kinds of things to living beings in front of me, etc. I mean, the list goes on, covered in feces, humiliated in any kind of way. Just, watching people or animals be literally disemboweled and having the entrails put all over me, horrific, horrific things. And then this facility, I was also experimented on. I was of high intelligence. I had the ability to heal my body. They did, what now I know to be MK Ultra type things. Horrific, horrific experiments on me and on other people that I had to watch. And this facility was connected to the subterranean levels of the Vatican, where I was taken several times, and literally they have a room where they have a giant altar and they bring in babies and children alive and they brutalize them in ways I don't even want to say. And then they cut them open with a special knife and just gut them down the abdomen, and they would collect the blood. It would drip down the four corners where they had chalices. And the people in attendance would be what I would just call VIPs. I just described who these people are. And they would share the chalices and drink the blood. Sometimes they would pluck out the heart and eat it. They're cannibals and they're blood drinkers. I mean, this is a fact. I know this sounds like a movie, but I've seen it with my own eyes. And the purpose of this ritual, apart from drinking the adrenalized blood, which they feel makes them youthful and gives them power, is literally to summon demonic entities into, like almost through a portal that they open through this ritual, into this reality and into that room and into their own bodies. So they are willing to be inhabited by dark entities to basically give up their human soul and take this entity in to inhabit them and live and work through them on this earth plane, which explains why these people have a cruelty and a brutality that we cannot even begin to understand. You will want to say this doesn't happen, that's impossible. It's impossible for us. but it's not impossible for a demonic entity who's now inhabiting someone's body. So this is kind of, you asked me early on kind of what I went through. And what I went through is just a daily horror, and then add to that the Vatican traffics children. So I was sold, I was given to whoever, for those purposes. And then put through what we call satanic rituals as well, which involve, hunting parties where a bunch of children are brought in, and then, a child's always sacrificed at the end of the night. You know, deliberately planned ritualized gang rapes, ritualized abortions when I was almost at term, when I was impregnated, all kinds of horrific things. I've seen them cook and eat babies. Nowadays, I have to say, I see this information coming out more and more and more. And if you look at halftime shows for sports events, if you look at music videos, if you look at Hollywood, if you look at the Eurovision thing that they just did, tell me you cannot see the Satanism. They're literally wearing horns and in red and drinking blood. And wasn't it some singer in one of these recently that like simulated like eating a heart and had blood dripping out of her mouth? For people that want to say, oh, this can't be true. I mean, look at it. They're admitting it's out in the open now. So this is not some entertainment thing. This is real. And this has happened to millions of children, throughout my lifetime and still is happening. So I'll stop there and let you comment or ask a question. I know this sounds really horrific, but I do believe like you and you agree that you can't stop this. You can't address this issue if you don't know what it is.
That is so true. I mean, you can't, it's the same with anything in life. If you're even on a personal healing journey, you can't really fully heal unless you know what you're dealing with, whether it's your physical body or past trauma or anything, you need to know what you're dealing with in order to actually look it in the face and heal from that. And so it's just, you absolutely 100% cannot be human in order to do those kinds of things to children and particularly to babies. And, I've heard you share about this, you know, many times, and every time you talk about the babies and I just my mind, my brain, my psyche or whatever just will not let me go to that place and actually see what that would be like. And, you know, if you're someone who's listening to this and you're having that same experience, well, congratulations, you're a human being with a really big heart. Because if you're feeling like this is impossible, this cannot happen, if you're feeling all of these feelings, then you're a human being. And you're absolutely right. It's impossible for a human being to do these kinds of things. I just, when you share about the hunting parties, that really creeps me out. When I was a kid, my dad used to I mean, it was nowhere near at that level, but I remember I would be like finding like hiding places when I knew that he was in that mood. He used to whistle. Whenever he started whistling, I would just run and hide. It was kind of like his signal or something. He was in the mood or whatever. And that experience of knowing that he's hunting and like looking for me, the terror in my body. And I can't imagine, like, you're a child and it's life or death. Like that in itself. But that was your living experience weekly, daily, so often. I just cannot imagine. And, when you were talking about the mind control in terms of, you were saying about they have trigger words. And so if people want to like see examples of this, I just watched, it's on YouTube. Darren Brown is he's like some hypnotist mind control guy, and he's actually it was really creepy to watch, but it's called Apocalypse. You can find it on YouTube. And what he does is he finds this person. He says he's doing a TV show, and all these people, you know, put themselves forward to be cast for this TV show. And he's looking for someone who's, you know, not really up to anything in life and someone essentially easily controlled. And he goes through every step, and part of it was that they were going to put a microchip in the back of his head, and the microchip didn't actually have anything. They didn't actually put it in, but they made it seem like they put it in, but that was the prop that he used, and then would literally train him to, like, he has to listen to an app with his voice over and over again and saying these specific words. And then when it came time to carrying out a certain task, whatever it was, this would be played through the radio, and he controlled all the media and the news. And as soon as he would say this trigger word, he would tap his head 3 times, and then he would, you know, find strength or carry out this act. And it's all laid out exactly how they do it in this series that he does. And that's not entertainment. That's like a documentary. And it's really scary to think that they're doing this on a huge, not scary, well, could be scary, but this is what they're doing on a mass scale with everything that they control. So can I ask, like, you were a child. So you shared about having memories as early as being an infant, but then when you were being taken to the Vatican and all of these underground facilities, and you were having these like impossible choices that you had to make, and like, how old were you? And there were other kids as well. I'm assuming they were similar ages to you as well. Is there like a certain age, like you have to get to a certain age and then that's when they start the, intense stuff, the more intense stuff, or is it just a free for all of like, is it methodical in how they do things?
It is methodical, but also it kind of depends on who the child is, what family they come from, and what the purpose for that child might be. But I know plenty of survivors, including myself. They traffic and sexually abuse babies. You again would find that very difficult. It's hard. It's just so devastating to even know that it stops one's heart, right? But so kind of both. They may wait for certain ages, but they will begin in infancy with certain programs and breaking attachment and trauma bonding and the isolation and all that, and sort of gradually increase. But with some, they will do atrocities to you when you're a baby. It's kind of a little bit of both.
Mm. Yeah, okay. Far out. And most people, so there are, not everyone makes it out alive, right? That goes through this. And this is a lineage in your family. Like, is this part of the reason why you were kind of chosen in a sense?
So yes, to answer your first question, some children are marked as expendable and some are not to be killed. You can take them right to that point, or they will have equipment to resuscitate nearby. So, and that does depend on family lineage. Also, I think that these people have a level of control that you would not really even begin to imagine or understand. And they use black magic, they use astrology, they use equinoxes and moons and solstices, and they do things on that level too, right? So for example, celebrities will have babies on very specific dates
Mm.
deliberately. So there's a lot of control that you wouldn't even imagine. Sacrifices have their ritual dates. Halloween is a big one. September 11th is a ritual, satanic ritual sacrifice date, which is why they blew up the Twin Towers and sacrificed all those people. That was a satanic ritual.
Mm.
Okay. The big disease thing, I don't know if I can say that if you're on YouTube. So that thing was
Yeah.
another satanic ritual. I mean, how many people have been sacrificed by that thing, that they put in people?
Hmm.
That's a sacrifice right there. Um, so I'm afraid I kind of lost my track of what I was answering. So remind me again, what did you ask me?
It was about bloodlines essentially
Oh,
and
bloodlines.
bloodlines
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to say is so there's the bloodline thing. And then that's what I was describing. They have all this ability and very secret technology, by the way, way more advanced than we know to exist. So they can also identify a light being who incarnates into this planet to be here to fight the dark. So we've been in a spiritual war between good and evil for a long time. And
mm,
I believe that right now, and they knew this, we're ending a dark age and we're entering just galactically and astrologically a light age. So they've tried to do everything they can to prevent us from rising in consciousness and ascending, as they call it, and blah, blah. By the same token, they can identify souls that are coming in that are going to be part of the solution, that are light beings, literally light warriors who have decided to incarnate here. So sometimes it's that, so I have a sense it was both in my case. They sort of identified like, ooh, because I remember pre-incarnation being at some kind of galactic meeting and we were discussing planet Earth. And planet Earth, from what I remember from that memory, is a very significant planet in the universe. And what would happen here would affect everywhere else. So a lot of beings, not necessarily from Earth, volunteered to come here, particularly at this time when this sort of energetic transition was happening. It's like a nice wave that you can surf on.
mm,
And so I do remember that, and I volunteered to come. So, it was both. It was the family, but it was also that I deliberately came here to be part of the solution, along with many others. I mean, we're all special. So I'm not saying it's me, necessarily, but a lot of us came here. And I was told this also when I was about 5 years old, that a bunch of us came and that I needed to stay alive because later in life I would find these others like me and
mm.
we would join together and we would affect change. We would transition this planet from darkness to light. So, yeah, but again, to say what I always say, on some level, they're also targeting all of us, aren't they?
Completely. Yeah, absolutely. And so, oh goodness, so they saw this in you, right? This light in you. And this is part of the reason why it was so critical for them to break you down and, as much as they could. And they had a role picked out for you, do you feel?
Yeah. As many abilities as I came in with, they hope to turn that towards the dark and to use me for their benefit. I had a reading from a woman not that long ago, and she called me and she said I was an unprecedented anomaly in my family line, and that they saw who I was and they did everything they could to use me for dark purposes, but it didn't work. And in fact, it backfired on them because they actually honed my strength and my abilities by what they did, at which now I'm using for the light. So
Mm.
yeah, it's and I am not. I didn't go through all this to rock in a corner and suck my thumb and be a disaster. Like, it was a motivation for me because they made the mistake of telling me when I was quite young. My uncle would say, I'm going to make you like me, like us. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, no. So it's like this little flame that went in me, and it's what kept me going. I knew, like, no matter what, I will never, that was my way to fight back. That was my victory. You're never going to do that. So they made a big mistake in telling me that they had big plans for me. And so no matter what, that was never going to happen. And now that I've been able to heal and recover myself and put myself back together, I mean, not that that journey's ever done, mind you, but I'm going to do everything I can to expose them, to help people who have gone through trauma, which is pretty much all of us. It's a continuum. You come into this planet, you're going to be traumatized in some way. Help people heal, because if we put ourselves back together, they fragmented us. If we put ourselves back together, we step into our power, then your memory comes back of who you really are and what you came here to do. What's my part? What's your part, right? Then we come together. They divide and conquer us in all ways because they don't want that.
Mm.
And when that happens, and then we reconnect not only with ourselves, each other, but our spiritual side, then that's it. They're done at that point, right? So I didn't go through all that to not do everything I can towards those ends.
Mm.
I'm a fallible human being, but that's, I don't really care about anything much in the world except for us making it and transitioning out of this hell on earth and creating the heaven on earth reality. That's what we're meant to live in, right?
Absolutely. It's so profound, Max. And it's such a, you can't listen to you and not be so deeply inspired and like, well, far out those things that I'm just resisting. Come on, like, what am I resisting them for? Let's just look in the mirror and let's just freaking deal with it because there's a bigger thing going on here, much bigger than our own individual. I'm not taking away from the experience. It's not easy. It's not easy at all to go through that healing process. And it's not some people think healing is like light and rainbows and healing
No.
healing is like dirty. It's dirty work, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I really love because you are one of the most intelligent people that I know, and like I mean, I heard you on an interview once. It might have been on Unbroken, your show, which I'd also love to talk about. But you said in school like your escape was the library, and there was one time you went in to borrow a book, and the librarian was like, "There is no more books. You've read them all."
Yeah, that was very traumatic for me. Yeah, it was when I grew up in different countries. It was when I was living in Argentina, and in a couple of years, I read every book in the library, and I remember being shattered at that moment. She said, "Honey, you've you've checked them all out. There isn't a single." I was just reading everything that I could get my hands on. So then I started to read all my parents' books at home, and even stuff like the encyclopedia. I just read the whole thing. But it was my way to it was a saving thing for me to
Mm.
have myself in a book. And actually, when I was in fourth grade, my mom was called into the principal's office. And for some reason, I was there in the waiting room, but I went and listened. And they told her that they had given me an IQ test and I was extremely intelligent and that they should move me into higher grades. And then nothing ever came of that. But I remember hearing that and I took that in and I thought, because I was always being told I was horrible, I was, just every horrible thing, adjective you can imagine. My mom used to tell me I should have never been born. She would say that when people got to know me, that I was pretty on the outside, but when people got to know the real me, they would hate me. That I caused suffering for others, which I kind of believed because in the facility, my uncle would do horrible torture rituals. And I felt responsible. Like, it's because of me. So I kind of believe that.
Mm.
So every chance that I got when I heard something contrary to that, I would kind of like file that away. So it was like, oh, okay, so I'm intelligent. And there was a time in the facility, I think I must have been around 4 or so, but they put me in this special box where once you were inside, there's no light, no, like you lose all sense of what's up, what's down, what time it is. It's this like special isolation box. And they had me in there for a long time. But when I was in there and when I was that young, I was still very connected. So I was like somewhere else. I was, my friend was Jesus. I was with him and I was at a waterfall and there were animals. And I was like, that metaphysical side of ourselves, which we all have, but they've severed that knowing and reduced us. I was able to survive that because of that. And I remember the moment when my uncle took me out. And I was kind of like, I don't know what they expected, but what they saw was, I remember him running his hands through his hair and taking a shot of whiskey because it didn't work, right? So I remember that moment. I remember moments when these men in white coats that were studying me and my choices and all these crazy psychological experiments, they would kind of like look impressed with me, and then my uncle would be like, stop that, he didn't want me. So I had all these moments where I could absorb like, maybe I'm not what they're telling me they are. But yeah, reading was my way to just escape. I read everything under the sun, and it really helped. And I still love to read. My great problem is I don't have the time I wish I had to read. But yeah, definitely reading saved me.
It's so incredible. It's so, so, so incredible that like it's just such a clear example of your spirit knew, you were to be here until the job is done. And like being able to find light literally where there is absolutely no light, literally. And, the desire to like find a thing, like reading, the desire to find reading so that you had somewhere to feel safe and to feel somewhat yourself, and through reading, you discovering all about yourself, discovering all about the world, and like so, so, so much. And so then you decided that you were going to become a psychologist. Like what better way
I,
to understand the other, the playbook of the other side than to
yeah.
learn all the reasons why they did all the things to you. Did you consciously know that that's kind of what you were doing when you went into psychology, or what do you think was the reason why you had to, of all the things, it was psychology?
I wanted to understand what the hell is wrong with these people? Like, why are they the way that they are?
Mm,
Why is my mother the way that she is? Why is my father the way that he is? Like, and I mean, I'm sort of joking, but there's a lot of truth in this that anyone who goes into psychology has some kind of difficult background. So I think we also are looking for a way to fix ourselves, to understand what happened. And but I also know full well that this field was used by them to against us, right? So what better way to work with your enemy than to know, like to immerse yourself in what they use? And I mean, even to the degree that when I decided to come into this lifetime when I volunteered, don't get me wrong, it's not like I said, "Ooh, I want to go suffer and be abused." But it's more like when someone joins the military and they're fighting for a greater cause, and then they know there's a risk that they'll get abused or tortured. But even then, I think I wanted to come into the darkest places on earth. And there's really not much darker place than the Vatican. I mean, my God, that place runs the world.
Yeah.
Um, what better way if you're going to be an elite warrior, so to speak, right? Like many of us are, is to go right to those places and check it out and live it. So then you can take those experiences and use them, you know, to help. So I think on many levels, and it's different when you're at your soul level. It's very different because I have a memory of that. It's when you're in a body. I mean, it's so much harder, and we feel physical pain and we feel psychological torment. When you're not in a body, it seems a lot easier. So sometimes I was like, oh God, what was I thinking? It seems because you have the big picture and you're doing things from that perspective, it seems more reasonable. Then when you incarnate, you come to a body and we have a memory wipe on this planet.
Mm.
So we don't remember who we all of like our Akashic records, who we really are. We don't remember, we're in this matrix that's fake anyway,
Mm.
right? So it's such a hard one, especially here. But it's different. When you're on a soul level, there isn't time, there isn't any of this stuff. So yeah, so now that I'm in a human form, I'm telling the spirit part, I'm like, yeah, this is a little worse than like this is bad. Help us. This is like really, really hard here.
Yeah. Unimaginable. Really unimaginable. And okay, so you're a therapist. You are incredibly intelligent. I'm really interested to know what it was like because you have worked with victims of various types of abuse and trauma and all of this stuff, but you have also worked with the perpetrators and in like prisons and stuff like that as well, right? And I know that there's a good percentage of perpetrators that were also they're perpetrators because they were abused. But I'm so interested to know what it was like working with the perpetrators, as, like in terms of, I'm assuming you were working with them to bring some level of healing to them, to their lives, and the experiences that you went through your entire life. And then here you are faced with other perpetrators. Like, what was that like? And how did you do that? I mean, more testament to your fierceness of your spirit and, you know, your like love for this planet and for the people, the humans here that you do that. But whoa, was that triggering at all? Did you have your memories at this time? Like, what was this like, Max?
So I want to start out by saying that every perpetrator has been, and we're talking about human beings here, has been tortured and abused. Thankfully, very few people who are tortured and abused become perpetrators. See the difference? So only a small fraction will go on to perpetrate. But that group who does, yes, 100%, they've all gone through some level of trauma. So I think that my soul, ultimately we want to not take sides. We don't want to become the oppressor. The oppressed don't want to become the oppressor. So we want to understand when you traumatize human beings, just like with dogs, if you traumatize dogs, they become aggressive, right? And then they bite, and then it's not their fault to some degree, right?
Hmm.
So I think my soul wanted to learn and see again both sides of the equation. I have this thirst to understand everything. And so I worked for 4 years running a batterers program. So men who had committed domestic violence and they would have gotten arrested. And if it was their first offense, they would be given a choice between jail or the men's groups that I was hired to run.
Hmm.
They had not had success with men running men's groups. So they decided to try a woman. And I mean, I was quite young too. I think I was 25 or so, 27 maybe. So I rewrote the curriculum. I think it was 10 or 12 weeks that I had with this group of guys. And what I discovered in the very beginning, of course, is that they had this hatred and this projection towards me. And, when I asked in the first meeting, like, can we go around the room and talk about, like, explain the incident that what you did to get you arrested and here, or some other incident? And the first response I would get is, well, she made me do it. And so I started out by telling them, look, we don't have much time. This is kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous or drug addicts. The first symptom is denial. We have to get over that. So you can either do that in this first group, or you can talk to your probation officer and choose jail. Like, that's fine with me. So I had that strength because look who I was with prior to that. Like, these guys weren't going to scare me at all. But also what I learned as I worked with them is about their past and the things that they went through and about what it means, what they have decided what it means to be a man is on this planet. It's very confining. And a lot of these guys would talk about, some bully beats them up and they go to their dad and their dad says, man up and go fight, like, these guys that I had couldn't even identify more than three emotions at all. They had gone through really horrible experiences, and what they felt was powerless. And so I would explain to them, if someone else can make you hit them or do an act of violence, that's bad. That means you don't have control over yourself. But if you accept responsibility for your actions, that means you can have different choices if you want, right? So I began to get through to them. And by the time the groups were over, the guys didn't want to stop. They wanted to keep going. So I would encourage them to, keep going together. They would say that they had never had an opportunity to be vulnerable and to share their pain and to be that intimate and close with another man ever in their entire lives.
Wow.
And given the opportunity, and I taught them things but given the opportunity, what naturally happened is they were able to, most of them, acknowledge, like, yeah, I did this and this is why I did it. But they were able to have compassion for themselves and understand where that came from. When you get pain inflicted on you, you can then go on and inflict it on others, like passing a hot potato on, and they acknowledge that. And they were able to change, and they didn't want to stop. So it was kind of amazing to me. And what I learned was, because I would have had this idea that men are bad, they're perpetrators, and I realized, well, men are just as much victimized by society as women, just in a different way, So we have our things and they have their things, but the controllers at the top are going to victimize both genders. Don't think they're, so I learned that, and I learned that people can grow and people can heal and people can step into who they are, And when I worked in a jail in San Francisco, I had a client who was 19 and, had basically gotten in trouble because he was pimping himself on the street. So he was a survivor of sexual abuse, and he had accidentally killed someone in an accident. And no one, everyone, the psychiatrist was just medicating him, and they gave him a diagnosis of bipolar. And I started to talk to him. I wasn't very well liked there because I would actually take people and talk to them, instead of just checking on them and giving them pills. And I discovered he was a trauma survivor pretty quickly. And then I realized he's not bipolar or any of this other stuff. He's PTSD. That's the only diagnosis that they have, which is very, ridiculous that that's the only one. But so I changed his diagnosis. And then the psychiatrist flew into the unit and ripped me to, verbally, like, how dare you, but I refused. Because I would have to write the notes. So every time he would diagnose him back from what he said, I would re-diagnose him back as PTSD because I'm stubborn that way. And eventually, after many arguments with the guy, I said to him, you need to stop medicating him. He doesn't have what you're saying. And he did, at some point. And the kid got better.
Mm.
And then he was up for release and they released him. And he told me that when he got out, he was going to go study counseling and he was going to work with teen runaways such as himself. He suddenly had a purpose in his life. He realized, he wasn't bad. He was the victim of a lot of bad stuff and he made some bad choices from that, right?
Mm.
So, that's just a couple of examples, but things like that. It really was good for me to work with deeply traumatized people. I also worked at a rape crisis center. I worked with sexually abused children. I worked in the inner city with addicts who, all kinds of really things most people wouldn't touch. But to me, that was not some difficult thing after what I had been through. That was like a piece of cake. But
Mm.
it gave me agency because when I was a child, I couldn't stop them from torturing and killing people in front of me, and I couldn't do much to help. So now I could. I could help people who were suffering and who were in pain. And that was a big part of my own healing, actually, to be able to do that and to do something to help. So I really, really got so much out of all those experiences. And, I loved the people I work with, not romantic love, but love, human love.
Mm.
When you know someone, when someone is vulnerable with you, you love them. We're supposed to do that. We're supposed to love each other. And just that, I think, is one of the most healing things on the planet. If we can just learn to spread love, and even if we do nothing else, that makes a huge difference in this world.
Oh, Max. Oh, that is so moving what you shared. Like my heart is, I could cry right now just from how moving hearing you share about the difference that you made with, you know, the men's group with this 19-year-old. And I'm also present to like, oh, he's one 19-year-old. And there's so many versions of him all around the world that they are just medicating and diagnosing and keeping in that box, and then that's it. Imagine if there was, thousands of Maxes running around re-diagnosing people and setting them free, and then those people go off to then, become counselors and help people just like them. It's like that is exactly what this global cult doesn't want, but this is the
Yeah.
kind of thing that happens when people get connected to their true self, their true humanity. It's so, so, so moving. And I'm just really present to your extraordinary capacity to hold space for so much. And it is like the bandwidth of that is so, so, so ginormous. And it's,
Well, thanks to my abusers. They did all this to me, and hey, they made me a black belt in many things. So
mm,
that capacity is because people say, how did you survive? Well, because I did survive. That's how I built this capacity because I had to. It was die or somehow reach into some part of me and pull out more capacity so I can keep going, right?
yeah.
So in a way, thank you because you did me a favor because I won, because they didn't take me down. I now am stronger. They literally made me stronger. And I want to just say real quick, at this point in my life, I was working for a system. And so I had to diagnose. So the only diagnosis I was ever willing to give anyone was PTSD because we're all traumatized.
Mm.
But now I don't diagnose. I don't believe in diagnosis and I don't work with insurance because I refuse to diagnose people. it is putting a label on people. That's what they like to do to us. People will be like, oh, I'm this. No, you're not that. You're a human being. You may struggle with these things, but when you diagnose someone, you give them a label, they then take that in and they believe that they are that, and it creates a sense of victimization and powerlessness. So I just want to point out, I don't believe in diagnosis.
I love so much that you brought that up. This is something that I have been feeling so strongly for a very, very, very long time. And I don't know necessarily where I started this came from, but I've never liked the idea of labels. I think it started when I was really young and I didn't know I was a different color until someone else pointed out, and I think that could have been my first label. And I was like, hang
Yeah.
on, before that moment, I thought we were all the same. I didn't
Yeah.
see a color. Um, and so, yes, I really love what you just said. And I'd love to get into that deeper. But um, oh, now where was I going with that? I totally lost my track. I just got,
Well, let me just say something about that, what you
yeah.
just said, because they encourage us to see ourselves as different. When you look at little children, they don't. I've seen so many situations of children that like a little girl who was white and a little girl who was African American, they said, well, we're twins. And the person was like, how you're twins? And they were like, yes, because we both have the same Barbie and we both want to be teachers when we grow up. And like the commonalities that they were saying made them twins. That's the innocence. They didn't see any difference, right? But they do this deliberately. It's a divide and conquer thing. It's to separate us because there's only one human race, okay? And there's only one common enemy that we have, and it's them.
Mm,
So what do they want? They want us to feel that we are enemies to each other because that works perfectly for their purposes, right?
yeah.
And to just add a little bit further to that, there's this thing in the last few years where it's this thing called Black Lives Matter. Okay.
Mm,
First of all, everyone's life matters. All of us, trees, water, animals, the planet itself, life matters. That isn't because they care about people of color. That's a program. It's the Black nobility. It's the Black sun. It's them they're saying their lives matter. Okay. They're not talking about any ordinary people of a certain skin tone. Don't be fooled by that. I just thought I'd point that out.
thank you. That's really, really important. And you're so totally right in that it's just all these labels, and we seem to be generating so many more labels that we can cling on to. And they're just a way to further fragment us. If there's a piece of us that is, I don't know, we're black, and there's another piece of us that's a transgender, and then there's another piece of us that's, we're anxious, or we're this, or, we have all of these diagnoses, and then there's no one human then, is there? It's like we're just all fragmented, and we have to be and manage all of these different labels that we are. We're just distracted from who we really are.
Yeah.
And that's really the point. It's such a powerful thing, Max. It's so, so, so powerful. Um, okay, so now you are just so my gosh, I get so overwhelmed with like, there's so much. One thing I just want to keep asking questions, but you're now, you started speaking out. And when you first started like this is such a humongous step. Like you were going through life and you were working with people and working with the people in the prisons, and you were all of that stuff. But then there was a point where you're like, this is not enough.
Well, there was a point in between. In between those two things, I got pregnant and had a child. I have a
Oh,
daughter.
yes, of course.
So now, this is how I see it. The minute I right before she was born, I quit working. So part of it was, of course, after my experiences, I wasn't going to trust anyone else looking after her. But also, I felt very strongly, and I feel very strongly that the way that we have children in our society, it's been all distorted, is another part of their programs. It's very destructive. Children need a parent or more in their lives. I mean, so I wasn't going to bring my daughter into the world and not raise her myself.
Mm.
So I stopped working and didn't start working again a little bit till she was 16. And so I devoted myself to raising her, to being her mom. And so that was another stage. And again, you might imagine another big stage of my healing because I really it broke my heart open to love. And I loved and protected this little being who's now, we are so close. And, it's the joy of my life. And
Mm.
there's nothing more important, which is why motherhood is devalued and not paid. So you pay people to sell things, but someone who brings life into this world and raises and nurtures that life and brings up the next generation, that's devalued. So, there's nothing more important than bringing a child into this world and giving them the right love and nutrition, whether that be emotional or physical or whatever, and bringing another human being up who can lead this world forward.
Mm.
So that was another stage of my life, and it was really significant for me. And a lot of memories came up at that time. Which happens for anyone who has children. When you have things in there, you have a child, especially when that child is an age that you had a traumatic event, it brings it back up.
Mm.
But so I took a pause to do that job, to do that kind of work, to be a full-time mother. And there's some things I regret in my life, but not that.
Not that, no. And I think, oh my gosh, yes, being a mother is the
It's
most,
hard.
it's hard. It's particularly when you are being a mother in a society that in the kind of society that we live in that is not, it's not conducive, it's not empowering of mothers, it's not supportive of in any way, shape, or form. If you want to, if you have a traumatic birth experience and you actually want to heal from that, it is so hard and expensive to find really good quality people that can support you through that. Like there are the typical like, oh, okay, you're feeling a little bit, depressed, or, they give mums lots of labels as well of like post-traumatic, postpartum depression, all this kind of stuff. And then it's like, here's the pamphlet for all of the people that we then recommend you go see and talk to. But those people are so inundated with like all of the women that they are. Like I have a client at the moment who she is a social worker that she goes to, but it's like once a month, and the social worker is so inundated, and they're not really getting anywhere, and it's not really actually making any kind of difference. And so it's really hard to find someone that will actually help you heal and understand that you had this experience and it actually wasn't your fault. We've been groomed to really relate to ourselves as women as so weak and like shameful in that we have this monthly cycle, and and there's no education truly about pregnancy and childbirth and what that really means and the transition into motherhood. We've no education in that whatsoever. And then you become pregnant and it's like it all happens in a vacuum, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, what happens? What's birth? But people, instead of learning about that actual process of birth and what happens and the portal that it opens up and the transition in your life, they're more learning about what is the hospital terms and what does the hospital do, and if I go to this, many weeks, what does that mean for will the hospital let me do this? And
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, look at our society and how it's set up.
Mm,
It's not set up for mothers and children. It's anti that. Why would anyone go give birth in a hospital to begin with? It's medicalized, you know? So the whole of everything about pregnancy and motherhood and birth and child rearing is set up deliberately to be stressful, to be toxic, to be negative for the mother and the child. And then we wonder why women may get postpartum depression. I mean, WTF? I don't
mm.
want to curse on camera, but like this is wrong the way it's done.
It's
So
so,
it's
so,
deliberately done wrong.
yeah. And it's
You
all
know,
what you say as well. The trauma-based mind control. That is the whole experience of pregnancy. You go in, every very regularly and they check you and you have to take these tests and then taking a test triggers your experience in high school of when you had to take a test and how anxious you want to pass the test, but then, the parameters of passing the test are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And so, they're grooming you through that process to then give over your power and give over your trust in yourself rather than trusting yourself in your own body. Oh no, it's the experts, because
oh
they know
yeah.
what they're doing and like this. And then that's your initiation into motherhood. So that then sets you up to throughout your whole mothering give your power away. Someone else is going to take care of the child. Someone else is going to be responsible for it. You can put it into someone else's care. And like it's just all set up. And yeah, it's exactly what you said. Like people think that we have to change the system, but the system is set up and doing exactly what it was designed to do from the beginning. And
Yep. Yep.
oh
And
man.
women aren't supported. I mean, you know, when now there's all, I mean, I thankfully don't have to deal with menstruation anymore as of, 10 years now. But when I did, there's this thing called PMS. Well, again, when you're on your menstrual cycle, you're supposed to retreat from the world and go inward and be in a meditative state and have support. So it's all set up, all these issues that any of us have in any arena just show us that the environment we live in is unnatural, it's out of balance. And without that, we would be okay. The
Mm,
normal thing in nature is it always recovers, it always rebalances, it always heals itself. Okay.
mm,
So we're out of balance. They've deliberately cut us off from nature, from each other, from the inside of ourselves, from our spiritual connection. So do we wonder why we have all these issues and ailments and problems? That doesn't need to be the case. It's deliberately designed to be the case. But if we correct that, actually the norm is to be okay. The
mm,
norm is to be in abundance, to be loving, to be healthy, to be joyous. That's the true, real way that we are meant to be and meant to live. This entire thing is a effing nightmare,
mm.
deliberately created nightmare. So do we wonder why people have all these issues? I mean, why is everyone so sick? Why has the lifespan gone down? That's been deliberate. Okay. Thanks to Rockefeller, he demonized real medicine and he instituted allopathic medicine. And instead of herbs, he went to petroleum based pills that people take, artificial things. This is all, and the intent was to sicken us, profit off that, manage disease. You can't heal anything.
Mm.
So the entire structure of everything, education is meant to create obedient, authority obeying, mind controlled, compliant people. The medical system is meant to keep you sick and weak because if your body is weak, your mind is weak. You can't connect to that bigger part of yourself and do more out in the world. They demoralize us with all this violence. I can't even remember the actual number of the statistic, but It was like something like when a child, by the time a child is 18, they've witnessed, I mean, some like astonishing amounts of acts of violence on television.
Mm,
Like that is programming, that is conditioning the mind, and it's demoralizing and it's desensitizing.
mm,
And as the decades have gone by, the level of horror, like teenagers now like to watch horror shows, you were so desensitized to all of this that we don't even have that normal human reaction anymore. So I just want to point out all of these issues that any one of us have, whether it's motherhood or anything, is because we live in an inverted satanic reality. And this, but here's the silver lining. Despite all of that, we're still good. We still love our children for the most part. We still help each other when there's natural disasters. People run out and help each other. We still have that. They have not been able to kill that humanness in us. So I have a lot of hope
mm,
for the future because look who we are under the extreme duress that we've been under poisoning, under mind control, under, all of that. And here we are,
mm.
and you and I and so many people are trying to even make a difference out there. So, we've got this because of who we naturally are. And I mean, my God, how resilient we are. They have not been able to exterminate us, no matter how many times they've tried. Like, haha, we're still here.
Yeah, like literally 500 years of burning women at the stake. And we're still here. 500 years. That's a long time and a lot of women, you know. And yeah, we're still very much here. And I love this. And that leads me to my next question. And I want to know all about Unbroken because I love what you're creating with Unbroken. And I love that the title Unbroken because that's essentially, I assume, why you called it what you just shared about they can't break us. And I really, really love what you are doing. And I love I've watched so many interviews on your website that you have done, and it's so empowering. Yes, challenging to hear the things that you share on those interviews, but you always end your interviews with this like solutions and the healing and togetherness. You've created a monthly group where people can literally just come together. And this is what we do. We just come together. We just connect from all over the world, people of all kinds, and I think it's so moving and so inspiring who you are and what you continue to do and fight for. So I would love for you to just talk a little bit about Unbroken and your mission and yeah.
Well, you're right. I deliberately did choose that word. Yes, we've all kind of had this dance with the dark, but what if we use that to go higher, to become stronger, to become wiser? Humanity's like been in childhood and we've been taken advantage of and lied to and manipulated and deceived and, all the things that I've already said. But what if we can gain wisdom from that? What if we can recover and heal? And then that experience becomes something we can put under our belt that makes us go forward and we can retain that childlike vulnerability and goodness, but now have wisdom and discernment so that we never fall victim for something like this again. So yes, they have broken us, but when we unbreak ourselves, we're not just back to the way we were supposed to be, we're higher. That's what I mean by that word. And yeah, it started out with me being angry at God and saying, WTF, like people need to know the truth, and hearing, well, then tell them.
Mm,
And I thought, what, me? Like, I'm a little bit shy. I would never have, if you had asked me 10 years ago, if you had said you're going to be on camera, I would have laughed in your face. But I knew, like, okay, I have to do this. So I started with my own story. And then it naturally led to asking other people to share their stories. And then it was bring truth warriors, as I call them, in to talk about all the various parts of the system and what they're doing, because you've got to know the truth to break out of their, it's a mental prison right now.
Mm.
We're slaves in disguise, you know. So I brought in truth warriors, and then I brought in teachers to teach about different things, about consciousness, about, you know, psychic ability, about whatever, and healers to talk about healing your body, healing your mind, you know, nutrition, like energy healing, all of the different ways. Because I think if we know the truth, if we really know what's going on, and we heal ourselves and put ourselves back together, that's a winning formula. So I have interviews on my website about all kinds of topics that people can go and they can really learn about the global cult. I think it's important to know that.
Mhm.
And then a few months back, I started these, we call them unbroken warriors, you know, who come together once a month on a Zoom call. And so if you want to support me and join these Zoom calls, then you become a member for, you know, a small amount. And that helps me out. And we're creating a community, and it's growing and growing and growing. And it's so beautiful.
Mm.
Just and a lot of people there are so hungry for a place where we can all come together, those of us who know what's going on, those of us who are here to affect change. And we talk about all kinds of different things. And I bring special guests in. So Rachel came in once to talk about the ley lines. And last time, Marjorie Wildcraft came in and talked about how to grow your own food, which is a huge thing we have to all learn how to do now.
Mm.
So I have special guests that come, but it's learning, but it's community. It's building this community because we need to come together, and we're going to do things as a community, right? And it's right now it's a global virtual community, but who knows what's going to happen from there. And so we're throwing out ideas. So that's something, you know, you're welcome to come join us and add yourself into that community. I do see help people, you know, see clients. I help mostly, it's really all survivors of some kind of violence in that continuum. And I am at the moment putting together a class on, it's kind of going to be like a psychoeducational class. So cover everything about trauma and recovery, because that is the topic of now, because we're all traumatized and we all need to recover. So we're going to kind of cover different topics on different things and what we can do, and just give people the tools so that they can also help themselves. But at the same time, each class will be its own community as well, and people can, you know, talk to each other and find that emotional support. So that's coming. And then in the future, I mean, I don't know, it's endless, because I'm open to spirit. Like, what should I do next? What can I do next? You know? And so, but my biggest joy and blessing from doing Unbroken from that platform is the incredible human beings that I have interviewed, that I've met. We're a network of people now. And it is what I was told when I was 5 years old. I will find those people and we will do work together. And sure enough, we are.
Mm.
And, you know, I was invited to speak at Anarchapulco this year in February in Mexico. And I met some of the most amazing humans there who are now part of my network. So my biggest blessing is just getting to know and adding as my community and friends these warriors. We've all come here, including yourself, Georgina. You know, it's really amazing to meet these people. It's everything to me. And I know that this is significant, and we're going to go forward and work together in bigger and bigger ways. And we've got this. We can change this reality, but we have to do it. We can't sit back and wait for a savior. We can't sit back and wait for somebody else to do it. We really just have to step up and start somewhere. I started somewhere, and then it evolves, you know. So step into who you are and do your part here, because this is important. And we have a huge opportunity right now. I really feel that we have an opportunity. We need to seize it.
So
The
powerful.
the dark is going down. Look around you. It's crumbling before our eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, we
So,
definitely have the momentum
yeah,
and they're kind of playing catch up.
yep.
Spaghetti on the walls is very obvious with all of their desperation and attempts to try and keep control, but yeah, it's crumbling, like you said. I have absolutely loved having you on the podcast, Max, and I have to say, I am someone that you work with. I've been working with you for a little over a month now, I think, and sessions with you are so potent and immediate. I think you have so many gifts, and you know, part of this 36-9 ruling number is that your power is in your speaking, is in your voice, and what you speak, you manifest. And that happens in our sessions. Our very first session, you said, there's some rage in there. I was convinced there was no rage. My voice went really high. No, Max, I'm a very happy person. And quite immediately, I had many opportunities. I call them opportunities for healing.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
are.
they
Yeah.
are that showed up in my reality that seemingly had nothing to do with our session or anything we talked about, but invited all of that rage to come through. And, you know, uh, you're just absolutely, not just, you're exceptional and so laser beam accurate with the work that you do and what you say and what you pick up on and how you say it. And, like it just, there's the way that you do things and say things that make it unavoidable for me to then, all right, I have to deal with this, which is really good. So please, if you're anybody who's experienced any kind of trauma and you've tried a lot of different things and you've been through a lot of different therapists and healers and all of this kind of stuff, you're ready to rip the weeds out. I'm assuming, Max, that you're taking clients.
I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Then
At a certain point, I stop because I can't take too many people because then I have to have a balance in my life to be effective with people. So, but yes, right now I do have openings.
that's amazing. Definitely reach out and people can find you at your website, unbroken.global, right?
Yes, there's a services tab at the top. So if you click on that, you can see it's either counseling or what I call ascension coaching, like for people that are waking up. Waking up can be very traumatic. And like I can help people through that stage as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, for me, I reached out to you because I started speaking publicly. I started this podcast and I thought it'd be great. It'd be so fun and rainbows and freeing and all of this stuff. And all of a sudden I found myself after the very first episode I did, like, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel like there's an alien on my face? Um, so thank goodness. It's been actually really amazing and powerful to work with you alongside doing this podcast because every time I do this and speak, it challenges and triggers, not triggers, it really challenges all of my trauma, the programming I got to not speak growing up. So
Yeah.
it's been really amazing. And I am so excited for this trauma course or class that you're putting together. Like my name is already on that list. I don't know if you've got a list, but my name's on the list. I'm so excited. I think that everyone needs to do a course with you about learning about trauma. You know, you have an experience of trauma that's not what is getting taught out there in the mainstream sense. So that's really exciting. So that's the best place to find you, unbroken.global. And you're also on Instagram. Sorry, I usually
Yeah.
should let the
Yeah,
girls.
I have someone who helps me with that because I'm not very good yet with technology, but my interviews are on BitChute, Brighteon, Rumble. I used to be on YouTube, but I was terminated by them for,
Can't
telling
imagine
the truth.
why.
Instagram, play, and I've just started a Substack because I also enjoy writing. So I'm getting that together. So pretty soon you'll be able to find some of my written work there as well.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Max, for being here and for sharing your story and for being such a warrior and leading the way for so many.
Thank you for having me, Georgina. It's been an honor and fun to do this with you.
Oh, I'm so glad it was fun.